Welcome to BodyWork. Welcome back. It's Michael Rogers. Welcome to BodyWorkBoxing. I want to talk about TszyuHarrison, Tszyu, and the outcome of that fight. Man, I haven't felt like this since I seen Shawn Porter go up against Bud, man. And you know, it's a guy named Moy Garan. You watching his little takes on everything. I don't agree with everything, but I agree with his take on this one. And it really looked like Tony went over there to make Tszyu look good, man. I haven't felt like this since I seen Shawn Porter and the way he went out against Bud. I would say that I kind of felt like this when Caleb went up against Canelo, except for I felt like Caleb was much more of a front runner in that fight, and it was only one round, the first round, that I felt like TszyuHarrison actually won. You saw the flashes where, you know, his pinpoint accurate jab, the way he pivoted when he decided to do the 1-2. You could see that, but you could clearly see that he wasn't the same. You know, in the Caleb fight, I had him winning up until the infamous, I looked pretty good for whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like up until that point, I had Caleb as the front runner. He was winning that fight up until, you know, Canelo decided to end it. Hadn't felt like that since then. But it's different because I felt like Caleb Plant did more than what Tony did in this fight. Tony did nothing in this fight to lead me to believe that he was even trying to win this fight. And I actually like TszyuHarrison. Much like when Shawn Porter fought Errol Spence, even though I'm a Spence guy, even though I'm a Jermell Charlo guy, both of them fights, those fighters earned a lot more respect from me from the way that they fought in those fights. And that's the same thing with Tony. Ever since, because I didn't like the, you know, TszyuHarrison got a way to be able to get up under people's skin. I'm like, man, this man talk more shit than a little bit, you know? And I'm like, man, but he earned my respect in the way that he fought Jermell Charlo. So whenever he came on, I was like excited to see him. I'm like, cause man, this man can box. Not that he didn't show that he couldn't box before, but you seen what happened with a Hurd. You know, the other guy that he fought when, you know, he was, you know, boxing beautifully all the way up until the end and he didn't get caught. You know, that's been, you know, the jacket that's been put on him. But in this fight, I didn't see, TszyuHarrison looked like a shell of himself. And, you know, from coming out pre-fight with the shirt off, what he was talking about, you know, it's either business or the biznatches. You know, the whole mindset, it was just like, it was kind of off. You know, Tim came out, he had the suit, he looked polished, he took everything more professional. And it was almost like this build up to try to make Tszyu look good. And then I looked in, after the first round, I looked in Tony's eyes, man. His eyes looked dark. You know, part of me was like, man, when I heard Shannon Briggs in one of his interviews, when he said, keep your batch, you know what I'm saying? Did TszyuHarrison give up his batch before the fight? You know, and I kept listening to his brother in the corner after every round. He kept saying, Tony, you're not doing what we said. You're not doing what we worked on, man. Like, what, I need more from you, man. You're not going with the game plan. What's going on, man? He's like, man, you know, come on, man. Like, every round he was saying, and Tony was just looking like, yeah, okay. And he would go out there and do the same thing. And I'm like, man, why would you go out there and take, it looked like a nosedive, man. I'm not gonna lie. You know, I'll be one of the only ones that probably said, you know, a lot of people saying, oh man, he looked good. TszyuHarrison did not look good. And again, remember, TszyuHarrison had won me over as far as his boxing skill, and I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe Jermell just got his number, or maybe, you know, if he buckled down on this conditioning thing, he really got a shot against anybody, because he can box with anybody, man. I don't care how big the ring was. They could have fought in a phone booth. The Tony Harrison that I'm growing accustomed to is a fundamentally airtight boxer, and I didn't see that in this fight. It was flashes, you know, but he really looked like a shell of himself in this fight. And it also speaks to, you know, I talked about it in the welterweight division, how a lot of times going into these fights, when it was coming down to the Shawn Porters, the Danny Garcias, the Keith Thurmans, that age group, even Bud is lumped in that age group, other than Bud actually fighting top tier competition. Going into these fights, we don't know what these guys are. Kell Brook was in that. Amir Khan was in that age group. We don't know what to expect from these guys, because that's the time where if you don't really want it, one of these young guys will put it on you. And part of me says, man, there's Gary Russell in that category, because I got to see what he's going to do coming out next. But he's not a welterweight, but that age group, you know, it comes a defining moment where these guys got to make a decision whether they're going to move forward with boxing. And I only recommend it if their heart is truly in it and their conditioning is really in it and they're really like still hungry. Because it's different when you're not hungry, when you don't have anything to prove. All you're going to do is take more punishment, a la Jarrett Hurd. Because we saw what happened with Jarrett Hurd, and people were saying, yeah, he need to hang it up. This performance is making people believe Tony Harrison needs to hang it up. And if he would have came out there and put the beatbox, you know what I'm saying, on Tszyu, we would be looking at him different. But after seeing this fight, I'm like, man, it's an age group, it's a category, and this is why you gotta tip your hat to Jermell Charlo, and you really gotta salute that man and give credence to how much of a superior athlete, boxer, and all-around fighter he is away from the crop. He keeps himself in tip-top shape. He never disappoints. He's able to make adjustments. Even when you listen to how he was actually critiquing Tszyu in the fight and how Derrick James has instilled certain things in him and how he's looking at Tim, he called it out. He was calling out in real time. Tszyu he wasn't using any jabs to come in. He was just throwing an overhand right. Tony Harrison was there to be hit. He wasn't getting his head off the line. He was very predictable, stayed on the ropes way longer than he needed to. Because the game plan shouldn't change. If you in 12-round condition and shape, you should be able to pivot, use your jab, be opportunistic, hit the ones and twos, go to the body, make him miss. You know, let him come first, let him throw his punch first and then counter sometimes. Pattern recognition. You enact on that. After you see Tim doing that a couple times, you already know where he's going to be, what he's going to do. You know, we seen none of that in this fight. So, you know, much like the other guy said, man, if you got your hopes high and thinking that Tszyu is going to be able to do anything that you saw that he did to Tony Harrison, you're sadly mistaken. Jermell Charlo he should be the face of boxing right now. Other than the inactivity due to his hand being hurt right now, you know, and getting that fight pushed back, he takes on all comers, and he pretty much gets him out of there. And if he has to rematch you, he's definitely going to get you out of there. So I wouldn't get my hopes high on anything, any kind of semblance of what you saw Tszyu do to Tony Harrison. Much respect to Tony Harrison. I definitely think he should continue training Alicia. I definitely think that he should stick to training, you know, because it comes a point in time when, you know, it's time to hang it up. Especially if your heart not in it. And then his reaction in the post-fight, he said, man, this boxing shit is hard. Like, we know that, Tony. And respect you enough to tell you, like, hey, man, it's time to move on. I personally believe I see a similarity with Gary Russell after losing their fathers, who was very pivotal. Losing your father when he's that pivotal in your life in regards to boxing, it's almost like you lose a big part of yourself. You lose a big part of your motivation. You lose a big part of your, you know, that conscience that's on your side, that person that has your back, your security blanket, that one that makes you feel like everything's gonna be all right. And if I could just listen to, I think with them gentlemen, after losing their fathers, even with Hurd, we got to see a pattern. When these boxers whose fathers have been that critical in their lives, they become different fighters. And I think Tony showed in the Perella fight that, yeah, he still got, you know, the skills and everything, because he didn't look great his first fight back after losing his father, but that next fight, you know, he was able to actually show that he still had some skills. So we got to consider that, man. And once you lose your father, having your brothers in your corner is good. Having your family in your corner is good, but it's not the same. You know, so I give Tony much respect. I'm still not high on Tszyu. I'm still not high on, you know, him. And I think that he can be falling into one of the biggest traps ever. You know, with the antics that he said after winning that fight, yeah, he should be confident because he did it in front of his Australian friends and his family, and Tony really did make him look good. But if he goes into that fight with Jermell Charlo being that confident and believing that he's going to be able to do anything similar to what he did to Tony Harrison, he's sadly mistaken. Only way I can see that happening is if Jermell Charlo rushed back and he's not able to throw and use both of his hands the way he's accustomed to because of the injury that he's overcoming. So, you know, again, I salute Tony, you know, and with all due respect, I say, man, you know, transition into something else, a la Hurd, in the performance that you took, with the punishment that you took in that fight. When you get at that age, 32, 33 years old, you start getting hit by these young guys, taking unnecessary punishment. You know, it's life after boxing. And especially as a trainer, a coach, you know, a mentor, you need all your faculties. And I think that might have been the signal or a sign to say, you know what, you did what you needed to do for the sport, and it's time to move on. Anyways, that's all I had on the subject matter. You know, what do you think? What do you think? Was it a nosedive? You know, I'm not going to be a conspiracy theorist on this. I'm just looking at what I see. I would love to get your take, your thoughts on the matter. You know, let me know what you think. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Here at BodyWork Boxing, we don't take things for face value. We do that body work.